Hi, I'm Valerie Engelhart, and in this video, I want to do a study of a row of watercolor tomatoes. I've chosen this because the weather is getting really nice out, and going to farmers markets and seeing those juicy heirloom tomatoes inspired me. Not to mention, kind of seeing it everywhere right now. We're definitely having a tomato summer in the art and design world. So I started with some Aussie red gold and just painted a circle and filled it with water to create a varied look in the wash, and then dropped in some cadmium red. What I want this to do is I want those wet colors to fuse and merge. I don't want this to be really botanical or labored. I want this to be free and loose. Dropping in a little bit of permanent alizarin crimson just to introduce a cooler color into my tomato. All right, tomato number 1 is done. Time for tomato number 2. And I'm going in just with water. At least at first, going in with water, touching it to my still wet first tomato so that that color bleeds into the second. Then rinse and repeat, going in with my warm golden Aussie red gold. That color just screams summertime heat. And then dropping in the cadmium. And it looks really strong right now, but watercolor does dry paler than when you put it down, even up to 50% paler. So if you've put your color down and you're like, that's the right color, that's perfect, it's not. It is going to dry much lighter. So go in bolder than you think you need to go. And I'm loving how these are turning out so far with that really organic looking shine towards the top. And one of the other ways I get shine is to get a thirsty brush, nice and clean, and then just lift pigment off of the paper. And I do that while the paint is still wet, so it's a soft diffusion. But the watercolor isn't so wet that it rushes back into the space. It's the same technique with tomato number 3, but this one I've butted up more against that middle tomato, so it's like they're sitting closer together on the table. Add in my lovely golden orange with lots of water. Water is your friend with watercolor. I mean, it's in the name. Same steps, dropping in that cadmium red for a lovely bold bloom. And I'm not putting that paint in between the tomatoes. I want there to be a lost edge between those two tomatoes. So you can't really see where one starts and one stops. It all fuses together. Cool things down with some permanent alizarin crimson. And now, with just a wet brush, I want to create a shadow under the tomatoes. But the way I want to do that is by getting the paint from the tomatoes to run into the surface. My first tomato has dried a little too much for that to happen. And it turns out, so have the other two. But since there is still wet paint, I was painting flat, but now I'm going to elevate my surface at an angle to encourage whatever paint is still wet to flow downwards. And once I do that, that third tomato causes an eruption in that shadow area, which is exactly what I wanted. And while I did want variation in how much paint came out of each of the 3 tomatoes, I did want more coming out of that second one. So it just means I waited too long. Not the end of the world. This is a study. This is to learn. Speaking of learning, that stem is usually green, but I wanted to go in with the Aussie red gold just to keep some of that color harmony. I will be adding green in, but for now, I just want to keep things really hot in the color palette. So I've put down a bold color, rinsed my brush. My brush only has water in it right now, and I'm running it along the line that I've already painted to create a soft diffusion. I want there to be a lot of light in my painting. And, well, I mean, I'm sure whenever you've gone outside and it's like really, really bright, things are hazy and a little washed out. I want that look in this, at least for the branch. And now I am marrying that stem to the tomato itself, just using fresh water and introducing the line that I painted into the body of the tomato. And I'm lifting some of that paint where that stem meets the branch to try and create depth in space so that those little curved stems pop out more from that big main part. Looking at these, they also kind of look like those Christmas ball ornaments, so you can use this technique to do that too. Just anything circular, go for it. This will work for you. So right now I'm introducing some green. I think this is the Onnit Diamond Yellow from my Rockwell Canada set. And I do want to introduce the green just to create some contrast, since green is the opposite of red. Do you see that big bloom that's created between my middle and the furthest to the right tomato? Like that is one thing I love about watercolor. Just the textures that it can create on its own just by letting it be. So beautiful. All right, I stepped away to let the majority of the painting dry. I do have some wet space down in the shadow, but since I'm not painting there, that's not a problem. I've picked up some Limu Green Brown by Rockwell Canada. It's a dark, cooler color green, and I've grabbed my 3/8 Princeton Neptune, like it's a sword brush or a dagger brush, but it's that angular brush that I love to use for any sort of really organic, kind of spindly foliage. I find when doing like long, thin leaves, using my regular round brush looks a little, I guess, it just doesn't look as natural as it does when I use the angular brush. And it's just fun to use. Just starting from the tip and flicking it out. And that point is nice and thin, so I can get those lovely points at the end of those tomato leaves. Well, I forgot to mention the paper that I am painting on is an Arteza Expert paper, and it's a really good budget paper. Like for all of the like inexpensive paper that I've tried for doing just small studies or for when I'm a little bit more budget conscious of my works, it is probably my favorite. So that is the Arteza Expert. And this one was the, I think, like 11 by 14 pad, and I cut it in half. So it's just a little study. I'm going in now and I'm just adding some green to that stem to create depth and shadow and to introduce that color. And to be honest, painting tomatoes is not something that typically comes to mind. I am not a fruit or vegetable painter. I don't really enjoy still lives usually. But sometimes there's just something really nice about doing something you don't normally do. I guess it gets your brain thinking in different ways, getting out of your comfort zone just enough to make it fun. But this is simple enough that I wasn't like super intimidated or anything, or like, oh no, what if I mess up? I was like, oh yeah, it's 3 circular objects. I'm probably going to be okay. And it allowed me to experiment with, well, I don't usually paint things with a shiny surface. How would I do that? And how would I put them next to each other? And so I would encourage you, if you don't normally paint this kind of a subject, give it a try. It's fun to just sit back and try it out. And who knows, maybe this will be your new thing. Maybe you'll just love it so much that you'll just want to paint vines and vines of tomatoes, fill up your art room with paintings of summer vegetables. Or you'll just have a nice little afternoon, trying something new, having fun putting paint on paper and watching how they mingle together. And that's fine too. Doesn't need to be a masterpiece. Just sit back, relax, have some fun. Also, I don't normally paint with red, so this was a great excuse to paint with red. And here's the finished painting. If you liked this video, press that like button so I know to make more like this. And if you haven't yet, subscribe because I make videos every Monday and Thursday. Thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you next time. Bye!